Now for our next answer, we go back to the list and we scroll down. How about this one by the Hybrid 2233? What do you think the unemployment percentage will be in the future by 2030, by 2035? Now, this is a general question about job loss through artificial intelligence, which the media tends to scare people about a lot, but doesn't seem to really be happening. So it's much like inflation, where the media likes to scare people about this narrative, and a lot of people get suckered by the media narrative, but there's no real evidence of this happening yet. But does that mean it won't happen by 2030 or 2035? Now, this is actually not the right question to be posing pertaining to artificial intelligence and job loss. And I will explain about why that is and how we should think about this and how the government should ultimately adapt. Because this is ultimately not the fault of artificial intelligence, but rather the fault of government's inability to adapt to modern realities at the speed that is necessary. So this is a chart from McKinsey where I put some blocks and arrows over here, and this vertical axis is the only one that is important. This horizontal axis of hourly wage is not so important, and that's 2014 data. But this is relatively timeless and is what we're going to look at. What is the percentage of automatability, percentage of time spent on activities that can be automated? And it's pretty uniform. There are jobs that are at 0 and there are jobs at 100. So anything above 60% is highly automatable. For example, file clerks. So what does that mean that some percentage of jobs are automatable? What does it mean for jobs that are very high percentage of automatability? 80% to 100%, or even 60%.
That's happening to a lot of repetitive white-collar jobs. 44% of U.S. jobs are either repetitive manual or repetitive cognitive, and it turns out the repetitive cognitive might be the first to go.
Yeah, but this is also at a moment when we cannot get enough people to work in the jobs that we have.
So think of it this way. This box represents all paid work. Blue represents the work that is automated by AI. Some jobs close to 100% automated, some jobs close to 0%, but we saw that chart from McKinsey. There's a full spectrum of automatability among existing jobs. And then there's an unrelated concept that is never spoken about at the same time as artificial intelligence: taxes paid. The top marginal tax bracket for a lot of people in the United States at the federal level is easily 40+%, and then there's state and local tax on top of that. If you live in California or in New York City, your top marginal tax bracket is easily 55 to 56%. But a certain amount of income is taxed, so the output of jobs is taxed. Now let's say this circle represents 30% of all paid work, and this circle also represents a different 30% out of this total of paid work. And people never talk about these two things together. They are completely different concepts, and that's why all of these people opining about artificial intelligence and job loss through automation have not even considered what that really means. They assume that these two things have nothing to do with each other, which is ridiculous because they are in fact closely related. If you are paying a portion of your income in taxes, and if that job were to be fully automated, then the government would lose that much tax revenue as well, in theory. Now when you explain this to people, at least they migrate to a slightly more enlightened view, which is this. Okay, 30% of all work can be automated by AI, and 30% of all income is taxed, and therefore 30% of 30%, which is 9%, is represented by this purple zone of the overlap. So yeah, if 30% of jobs are automated by AI, then 9% of income tax collected is also vulnerable to that. But why should there be no correlation? This is a better understanding than the image above, where people would simply not consider, hey, if jobs might be going away from AI, then taxes should also be affected. After I point this out, then at least they recognize that there is some portion of overlap simply due to common sense. But the problem is not artificial intelligence. It is that the government is making workers uncompetitive by taxing the output of human work, but not the output of AI. And therefore a job that is 80 to 100% automatable, as per that McKinsey chart, should be a use case for a modernization framework. Why are we taxing humans at all when we should migrate the burden of funding government onto artificial intelligence? Now, Andrew Yang, who we saw a few minutes ago, had a very primitive idea about that, which is that there should be taxation of AI corporations, but since corporations are owned by people as well, that's just another variant variant of the same old tax the rich to give money to the poor, which is really, let's take $3 from rich people so that poor people get $1, and therefore the net amount of wealth in society goes down, but at least we got the satisfaction of taking $3 away from rich people. That is a very unenlightened view, but still, he's the only political figure who has even come up with any idea of inequality, even if it is a very primitive and unenlightened idea. He's still the only one who has any idea at all. I advocate something like this. We should make it such that as tasks are automated by AI, remember, it's never a binary of a job. Some jobs are 100%, but many are 80%, some are 60%, some are only 40%. And there's that level of fluidity in an economy. And so as tasks are automated by AI, and the non-automatable part becomes something that workers do more of because a portion of the tasks they were doing before are automated, we should migrate the burden of funding government onto this automation, and we should also automate government as well so that the cost of various governance services goes down a lot. And I've written about this at great length in my Atom publication. Anyone who has not read my Atom publication should do so, particularly chapters 6 through 11, where I talk about this particular idea and how it is the natural progression of how governance should work. All market forces are going in this direction. That is why so much money printing can be done, and we still don't have any aberrant inflation. In fact, that money printing is offsetting technologically derived deflation. It's not some super complicated process that gets these two circles to mostly overlap. It's never going to be 100% overlap, but a very high degree of overlap, so that automation, of which AI is a subset, is generating most of the output that funds government and even funds the safety net. Because in the United States, at least, 75% of all government spending is just payments to individuals. And since taxes only cover 75% of government spending and the other 25% is deficits, all taxes paid are just paid to individuals. They don't pay for roads or bridges and all the memorized points that people have internalized that are about 60 years out of date. They pay for entitlements like Social Security, Medicare, welfare, unemployment compensation, PPP loans and grants, and so forth. To get to this type of modernized level of government is not complicated. It's extremely simple, in fact. It involves removing a lot of intermediate steps between the central bank, the Federal Reserve, the fiscal authority, which is Congress and their budgets and things like debt ceilings and budgetary battles and so forth, and the way entitlement programs are structured, which are non-overlapping and contradictory in many cases. It's really quite simple, and all market forces are going in this direction. Therefore, to answer the question that was posed, the unemployment rate in 2030 or 35 will be pretty low, but it could be much lower still if governments modernize in time, which in the United States is impossible because the political system has become such that the worse and worse ideas and the least intelligent voices are getting the more traction, and the good ideas are not coming forth at all. So it's really a question of whether governments can adapt to the new realities of technology, and that will determine whether humanity has a prosperous future in the 2030s or has a lot of turmoil and widening inequality, but worse than inequality. Inequality in and of itself is not the problem. Inequality from a system that is perceived to be rigged against people playing by the rules is what the problem is, more so than inequality in and of itself. If governments fail to adapt to this modern framework, which I detail in the Atom publication, and I'm not going to say that my way is the only way that'll work, but whatever humanity eventually graduates to, if humanity is to have a bright future, will be something quite similar to this, because all market forces are going in this direction. Income tax on humans is economically and technologically obsolete, but politically it is a very important thing because people have been trained that you have to tax the rich and you have to tax people in order to pay for roads and bridges, even though that is only a small fraction of tax collected, and the vast majority of taxes collected amount to straight payments to individuals and are siphoned away in various types of corruption and graft. So that was the answer to this question. Remember, this is a playlist which you could even randomize, and then you'll learn a lot about AI. Thanks for watching.